The Tortoise and the King's Feast, a 30-minute story, narrator's voice. Long ago, in a time when animals could speak and the earth was ruled by a mighty king, there lived a cunning tortoise named Okwu. Okwu was known far and wide for his quick wit, sharp mind, and insatiable hunger for glory. Though small and slow, he believed that outsmarting others was the quickest way to greatness. However, his greed would lead him down a path of deception that would teach him a lesson he would never forget. Scene 1. The Invitation. Soft birdsong in the background, the sound of a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. One morning, as the sun began to rise over the forest, the king of the birds, a magnificent eagle named Ez, called for a great feast. It was no ordinary gathering. The feast was held in the heavens, and only the most honorable and virtuous animals of the land would be invited. Ezi the eagle had gathered his trusted advisors to spread the news. The feast would be a celebration of the balance of nature, where all creatures would come together to share in the bounties of the earth. Now, when Okwu the tortoise heard this news, his eyes sparkled with greed. He knew that such a feast would offer rare delicacies that could satisfy his endless hunger. And what's more, this feast would bring him honor and prestige. The king of the birds had never invited a tortoise before, but Okwu saw an opportunity, a way to get himself invited even though he wasn't deserving. Scene 2. The Plan. Sound of Okwu quietly plotting in a hidden corner of the forest. Okwu thought deeply, rubbing his shell with his tiny claws. He knew he wasn't fast enough to race to the feast, and no bird would ever let him join. But he was cunning. He could outwit the others. So he came up with a plan. The next morning, Okwu went to the forest clearing where the birds were gathered, practicing their songs for the feast. He slowly approached the eagle, bowed deeply, and said, "Great King Ez, I come with a humble request. I have heard of the glorious feast you are preparing in the heavens, and I ask for your permission to attend." As he looked down at the small tortoise and shook his head. "You, Okwu? A tortoise? You are not like the other birds. You cannot fly, and you are too slow to enjoy such a celebration." "But, Your Majesty," Okwu said with a sly grin, "I may not have wings like the birds, but I possess something far more valuable, a great mind. I have knowledge of secrets that even the stars do not know. If you allow me to attend, I promise to make the feast even more splendid than you can imagine. I will entertain your guests and ensure that all the animals leave the feast with stories to tell for generations." As the eagle considered this, he had never met a tortoise with such confidence, and though he had his doubts, he agreed. "Very well, Okwu. I shall grant you a place at the feast, but beware, you must not disappoint me." Scene 3. The Journey to the Heavens. Sounds of flapping wings and a soft breeze. As the day of the feast drew near, Okwu could hardly contain his excitement. He had outsmarted the birds and secured an invitation to the heavenly feast. However, the journey to the heavens was not an easy one. The birds would fly, but Okwu would have to find another way. Just as the birds were about to depart, Okwu approached his friend, the raven, and whispered, "I have a plan. Since you are going to the feast, I ask for your help. I have a gift for you." The raven, curious, agreed to listen. "I want you to carry me to the feast. I know that the feast will be held on the highest mountain, beyond the clouds. You are strong, and your wings will take us there swiftly. If you carry me, I will ensure you are the first to be served at the feast." The raven was pleased by the offer and agreed to carry the tortoise. As they flew together, Okwu smiled, knowing that his plan was falling into place. The raven would bear him to the feast, and when they arrived, Okwu would be the one who received the most food and the greatest honor. The birds would be too distracted by the feast to realize that Okwu had tricked them. Scene 4. Arrival at the feast. Sounds of heavenly music, laughter, and chattering of birds. When they arrived at the mountain, the tortoise saw the most incredible sight he had ever laid eyes on. The table was set with fruits, honey, and every type of delicacy imaginable. The king of the birds stood proudly at the head of the table, flanked by his advisors. Birds of all sizes and colors were already gathered, eating and laughing. The tortoise, with his small stature, was humbled by the grandeur of the feast. But his greed quickly overtook him. He took his seat at the table, and soon the animals were offering him food from all sides. He ate and ate, savoring every bite, his stomach growing fuller by the minute. But something strange began to happen. The more Okwu ate, the more he wanted. He began to compare the food he was eating with what the others had. He wanted the best of everything, the ripest fruits, the sweetest honey, the most tender meat. The other animals watched in amusement as the tortoise gorged himself, unaware that his greed was soon to bring ruin upon him. Scene 5. The revelation. The sound of a crack, like the breaking of something delicate. As the feast continued, Okwu noticed that the other birds were beginning to grow uncomfortable. Their laughter faded, and murmurs filled the air. As the eagle stood up and addressed the crowd. "My friends, I see that the tortoise is enjoying the feast, but we must not forget the true purpose of this gathering. This feast was meant to honor the balance of nature and to celebrate the harmony between all creatures. Okwu, you have taken more than your fair share. Your greed has overshadowed the spirit of this feast." The tortoise, caught in his gluttony, looked around and saw the disappointed faces of the birds. His belly was swollen, and his shell felt heavy with the weight of his actions. His heart sank. As he continued, "We will not tolerate such greed in the heavens. For every morsel you have taken, you shall give back tenfold. I curse you, Okwu, to never again be invited to such a feast. Your greed has taken away the joy of this gathering." Scene 6. The lesson. Somber music, the sound of a slow, sorrowful breeze. The tortoise, humbled and ashamed, slowly stood up and began his long journey back down to the earth. The raven who had carried him to the feast flew away, leaving him behind. Okwu's heart was heavy, but he knew that his greed had cost him the respect of the other animals. As he returned to his home in the forest, he thought about the lesson he had learned. He had tricked the birds into letting him attend the feast, but in doing so, he had lost something far more important than food. He had lost his honor and the trust of those around him. And so, Okwu the tortoise, once known for his cunning and greed, became a symbol of the dangers of excess. The other animals would speak of him for generations, not as a hero, but as a cautionary tale, a reminder that greed, no matter how clever the plan, always leads to ruin. Narrator's closing words. And so the tortoise learned that no matter how much one desires, there are things far more precious than food and glory, honor, respect, and the well-being of others. Let this story be a lesson to all who listen, that greed is never a path to greatness, and those who take more than they deserve may find that their hunger will never be satisfied.